Welcome to episode 2, part 3 of the Phat Games podcast. In this episode, Gary interviews me and asks me how I stay as productive as I do and what it was like growing up as both a game dev and gamer on the mean streets of Regina. Remember to stay tuned until the end for Gary's awesome music on Kids of Karendow radio. All right, we are back for part 3, and on this part, Gary is going to interview me. It's my turn to be in the hot seat.
Okay. Let's say what I want to ask you. Okay, so I don't know. You seem to be very, I guess, involved in the indie game making scene. So I kind of wanted to ask you, how did you become a part of that? I mean, like for me, traditionally, I don't think I was involved in it as much as you were. Even back then, and especially now.
Right. So let's start with back then. So when Gary and I were making games when we were a lot younger, when we were basically kids, there was a QBasic game development scene. It largely existed on IRC. I don't know if anyone listening to this even knows what the hell that is. What does it stand for again, Gary? Do you know?
I think it's like internet relay chat.
The internet relay chat, yeah, that's what I thought. So there was an IRC community for QBasic game development, but also a lot of it was on message boards on the internet in the mid 1990s. And I was all over that shit. Just because when I was younger, I think I had, I think it's safe to say, I was less self-aware. I was
I don't
very much
necessarily think it was a bad thing.
It was more self-promotion. I was much better at it when I was younger. I wanted to actually talk about the stuff that we were working on in the QBasic community. There was Holy Conquest, there was Snuff, and then eventually there was Kids of Karendow, the DOS version. And I really enjoyed doing that. Now, arguably, when I moved to the U.S. and you know, adult life sort of took hold and everything changed, and when eventually we got back into this, honestly, I went seeking that out again. I went seeking those forums out again, and it was quite a bit harder to find, but I did. I did find it. So initially, it was I was dating someone at the time who knew someone who was making indie games. And they referenced me in New York to this community known as Playcrafting. Playcrafting started out as this small sort of meetup group where a bunch of indie game developers would get together and show what they were working on and get other developers to play their stuff. That organization evolved over time under sort of the leadership of Dan Buchko into a full nonprofit organization that holds expos now. COVID has kind of restricted it, obviously, but they used to do quarterly expos partnered with Microsoft, and also they do their annual sort of big expo that's open to the broader community in a larger meetup space. And that is sort of what pointed me in the direction of the indie game development community in New York. And through that community, I met this group of people, this group of specific indie developers who just had a co-working space. And these are some phenomenal people, and they work in this space called Gumbo. And they created this sort of community space for a bunch of indie game developers to come together, work together, learn from each other, get feedback on their creations, and have basically a very positive space to interact and create together. And I got involved in that through Playcrafting, and I met a lot of them. And I've had a co-working space with them for over a year now. And I have to say, it's been one of the best experiences in making games in my life. It kind of helped me reproduce that sort of experience that you and I, Gary, and Phil and Brad had working in or making games rather in like my basement.
Yeah, you know what? That's kind of awesome. How like you're actually you have like office space, but you're actually excited to go.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And the people there are great people.
yeah. Oh, that's really cool. I never kind of knew that long form of the of you getting the play crafting. I always just kind of thought you just kind of fell into it,
I
but
mean,
I never knew how.
I kind of did, but it's kind of like I it goes back to what I said in the last podcast about sort of like when you say you need to take a break to find yourself and you're just sort of going back to relive your childhood. Um, to me, this is what it was. Like I was looking for that experience that you, me, Phil, and Brad had working on games together. Like that means so much to me. Like I get a lot of meaning and a lot of like that makes me happy in like in an incredible way that I think that probably a lot of indie game devs do, and I hope that you do creating music.
I know it's you know like there's a sense where I feel like we kind of missed out on the opportunities to kind of have that when we were younger.
I'm not sure we had
Although
the
I like
opportunities.
no we didn't right. But it would have been nice to. But you
Oh
know
yeah.
yeah like well, as you said before, I am still kind of grateful for what we did have. But it was too bad we couldn't share it with like you know other groups at the time,
I mean,
especially in the same capacity that you are right now.
yeah. I mean, we were in Regina, much smaller community. Um, well, game development has become way bigger now than it ever did when we were younger, and I think a lot of people that we approached when we were younger, certainly when I approached, didn't take it seriously. Like you go to computer science, like at least in my experience, when I there was some industry professionals that came and visited like my class in high school, and they were IT professionals, and I asked them, well, what advice would you give for people who want to do game development? And they were like, I don't know. I think there's some random school out in Vancouver. And in the 90s, there was. I don't know if that
Yeah.
school still, I'm sure it does, but I don't know the name of it, but it actually taught people how to do this. And there wasn't a lot, especially in Canada. I'm hoping it was better in the US. I assume it was because the US, quite frankly, seems to do a lot of that stuff a lot better. Um,
Yeah, I think maybe
for us, there wasn't.
around that point, I don't think kind of game development was really that big or that popular.
Or mainstream, yeah.
Yeah. Like, yeah, sure, there's kids playing Nintendo, Sega and stuff, but I don't know if they were necessarily aspiring to be game developers or necessarily knew what was involved in even being one.
There's a lot of people who just sort of like were doing things out of hobby, just kind of did it for fun, weren't really serious about it, just wanted to learn something. I mean, quite frankly, that was Phil. Phil did a lot of that. Phil made games to learn things, to challenge himself. But once he figured it out, he was good. And I think Phil would admit to that. I don't think I'm doing him any disservice by saying that.
No, okay, but yeah, I guess that's the portion of it that he liked. He liked the challenge of trying to figure out, okay, how would you actually implement this kind of thing, right?
Yeah. The challenge is removed with a lot of modern game engines because they did a
Yeah,
lot of the hard. The shaders, building your own shaders and your own special graphical effects is probably mathematically the most challenging thing that exists in game development today. Everything else has basically been done for you.
yeah. I guess you know, with the existence of you know how powerful the game engines are these days and how easily accessible they are, it
How
removes a
powerful
lot
they are,
of
how
the
powerful computers are. It
yeah.
removes like trying to be efficient when in the code you
Mhm.
write. You don't have to worry about that stuff
Yeah.
anymore.
But even with all that stuff removed, you still have really long development times,
It takes a long time to
which
create
goes to
content.
show you know how difficult it is to actually make a game.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
Making games is extraordinarily difficult.
that kind of leads me to like I guess a question that I wanted to ask you was you know what are the kind of struggles that you face in game production and you know, what kind of things do you do to kind of overcome these struggles, whether it not be just general game development, or maybe something specific in the indie space?
Let's go back to 2015.
Oh, are you
We
gonna
were,
segue into talking about Virgo's Bounty?
yeah, we're going to go back in time a little bit, talk about the other game we published called Virgil's Bounty. Um, I think finding reliable help when you don't have a lot of money is very difficult. Gary and I worked with an artist on Burgle's Bounty, which was the first game we finally published commercially. And the artwork produced for that game ended up being unoriginal and most of it unlicensable for a reasonable fee. So we ended up having to pull the original release of Burgle's Bounty in the summer of 2015, and we reworked the entire thing to release it early in 2018. It became a much interesting and much better game as a result of it. But finding people who are without, like, as an indie, you don't have a lot of money.
You also, I would say you also don't have, just resources in general. Like, imagine trying to do the whole thing by yourself. And that's essentially what we did for that last iteration of Burgle's Bounty. But because we had to do it all ourselves, you had to do the art yourself. You did the sound yourself.
You did the
imagine if I wasn't in the picture, you'd probably try to find somebody to the music, or you'd attempt to do it yourself.
I would have pushed myself to learn. It would have not been nearly as good. I might have bought something from a stock website. But finding people to work with like, lack of resources. Resourcing is a very difficult part when it comes to making indie games. Like, we didn't end up publishing this, but in our first podcast, we talked about a game called Arafel. Arafel had a lot of stock art in it, and I think some of the music was stock, but I feel bad for criticizing that game because it hit the same walls we hit. It takes a lot of resources to make a great game. And if you are trying to convince someone else to work for you for free because you don't have the resources to pay them and give them sort of profit sharing, you don't know how that's going to go. It could go really well, you get lucky, but it could go horribly, and it could really damage your ability to get the game done in a reasonable time frame. So with Burgle's Bounty, when Gary and I sort of hit that wall where our artist gave us work that wasn't original, and we were led to believe that it was, we had to kind of pivot and just make a decision based off that. And we actually became more creative as a result of it. But we worked on the game for another 2.5 years. And that.
Yeah, there was a sense that we almost kind of had to start over. Like, did you
were able
feel
to
that?
use a lot, like there's a lot of stuff that we could use, but there was a lot of stuff we had to redo. But as a result of that, we actually got more creative, because the 2.5 years we spent on that wasn't just rebuilding the same game with original assets. We created boss fights, we created a whole new play mode. Like, it wasn't just a like for like recreation with new art. We created a whole new game from that. We turned it into an opportunity, really.
I do actually like all the mechanical changes that you did to the original game.
Oh yeah, I think the biggest issue with Burgle's Bounty is the challenge. If we went back and wanted to re-release that, we would need to sort of really rebalance that. But it ended up being a better product as a result of that. Now, to sort of modernize, like, or sort of bring the struggle question more relevant to what we're doing today, a lot of it's the same. So Kids of Karendow is a much larger project than Burgle's Bounty is. And I've done a lot of the artwork. My brother did some, but we've had to bring in external help. And the number of artists we've had to bring into the project already is, to me, kind of phenomenal. Um, I mean, you hear this a lot. Like doesn't really have anything to do with games, but it's like finding good help is hard to come by, and like if you
It's
want to
always
pay the if you pay them, they will come. And but no, actually, that's not true. If you pay them, they might still suck and not be interested in engaging long term. We've got great relationships now with our artists, but it took a while to get there. And unlike a few years ago, we do have some financial resources to allow for us to actually pay people. Imagine if we were doing this without paying anyone. This game would never get done. It would be 20 years, like you were saying previously in the last podcast, which was also, I think, edited out. But Gary was saying that we would be done the game in 20 years. And that
it
sadly
still
would be
could
true.
it still could be.
No. It's getting done much sooner than that.
Scope creep.
No, not allowing for it. For any indie, this is a huge challenge. I don't think there's a good answer here on how to fix it. It's a struggle. It's a big struggle.
Yeah, I completely understand. Like I think for us, me being just kind of like a dedicated music guy, it's kind of like a facet that we don't necessarily worry about a lot in the same sense that like we're worrying about the art a lot, right?
But let me
But
let me ask.
I can imagine other developers struggling on that front.
Oh yeah, I mean, audio is a huge thing for game. Like I'm grateful and lucky that we are partners in this. Like you're not helping. You're a partner in this. You're in this with me together. And I don't think a lot of people have that. I know as a fact that working with the people in Gumbo, the relationship you and I have is unique. And it's not just unique in that we get along, it's unique that we are friends of 30 years and have been doing this forever. That and the fact that we get along and seldom, I mean, we disagree occasionally, but generally you and I have a very positive relationship.
I think it's because we're weird people. We're both kind of weird people, and that works for us.
That's certainly
Works
true.
works for me. I don't know.
Oh, it works for me. I love your sense of humor.
I know. I never tire of hearing that.
No, of course not. Gee, what else you got for me?
Uh, let's see. What do you get most out of making games? Do you feel that
So,
it's just game making, or do you like, the creative process?
um,
Um, do you
it
like,
is like, I mean, this is like a loaded question. Um, everyone, so let's take the world today as an example. We've got COVID. In the US, we have like a very unique and kind of troubling political climate. Um, and that seeps into everything. It seeps into your outlook on the world. It seeps into your day job. It seeps into culture as a whole. How do you escape from that? Like some people play games, some people watch movies, listen to music, read books, whatever. For me, I get out of that difficult headspace by making games. It takes me into a space that makes me truly happy. It's a true passion. It means the world to me. It always, quite frankly, even when we're kids, it always has. But as an adult, it's a creative outlet. Not only do I get to like write code, but I get to write stories. I get to kind of design, if you will, sets for like as you would in a movie, except it's in a video game. Um, it gives myself a creative outlet that gets me out of the reality of today into a space that I lose myself in and have a lot of passion in creating. You're creating a world, you're creating an experience, something that I find fun, something I hope that others find fun once this game is fully available to the public. It is a very important outlet and passion that I have, and I hope I will have until the day that I die.
That's awesome, Blair. Did you feel the same way, I guess, even back then when things weren't seemingly as heavy as they have been, I guess? Probably mostly because we're adults now when we're a lot more receptive to that kind of stuff.
It's always been about this. It's always been about passion.
But I think it's fair to say that, growing up as kids and kind of going through adolescence, that, we had our own struggles then too. And,
Yeah,
did the game making kind of serve as as an escape?
yeah, it did.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's talk about this. So as you know, Gary, like and like this is, I think this is probably an important thing for anyone listening to this podcast, especially if they're younger. Bullying when you're in school, like whether it be elementary or high school or whatever country you're living in, would call middle school, whatever it is a very kind of real thing. And as we as society have gotten better at sort of recognizing the negative aspects of it, it was sort of very real for me when we were growing up. And for me, like working with you and Phil and Brad on this stuff and getting away from the negative aspects of life as a result of sort of being bullied in school was an escape for me. And it was a very positive escape for me. I mean, as I said, like previously, like looking sort of for this community and sort of recreating that sort of environment that I had when we were kids is very important for me because it's a safe space. It was a fulfilling space. I love doing it and I love doing it now. And it's always been that for me.
Yeah, so it's not like kind of going out into the world and kind of having anxiety over what other people are going to do to you, kind of thing, right? So you talk about bullying. Do you want to tell me any bullying stories back in the day?
Oh man, I was bullied a lot for playing video games, and it's so interesting because now there are like basically professional sports networks for people who are really good at certain video games, and to be bullied about having that kind of passion today is probably or back then is probably alien today, which is like a huge difference. I think you would agree. Um,
Do you want to tell me about the time when some other kids tied you to a pole?
Fine, I'll share that story. When I was in eighth grade, um, I can't remember exactly all of the details about it, or I've blocked them out or whatever. My arms were it was fucking Canada, so it was cold at recess. So to keep my arms warm, I pulled them inside the sleeves of my jacket and had them close to my body. So my sleeves were like, flailing around, and someone pulled me over and tied up my sleeve so I couldn't get my arms back out of the jacket. And then someone, hopefully it wasn't you, Gary, said
I think I was one of the kids. Yeah.
you may have been one of the bullies, yeah. And so on our playground there were these old tetherball poles, except the tether balls had long been since removed. So there was just these random poles on the playground just there. Um, and so someone said we should tie him up to the pole. So I was pushed against this pole and they untied the sleeves of my jacket and retied them up um, to the back of this pole. And then on top of that, as I struggled, they tied my shoelaces together. And I was
Oh, did they?
kicking,
Holy
they
cow.
did. I was
Uh,
kicking against that, but they actually managed, because had my poles tied, my arms tied against the pole or whatever, my sleeves. They picked up my legs and were able to hold me together long enough to tie my shoelaces together.
those are some
So
mean kids.
yeah, Gary, yeah. And why don't you tell me what happened when everyone went back in and
Oh
I
yeah.
wasn't there?
So everyone like went back into the class, and then we were just kind of like sitting around. Class got started. Teacher goes, "Oh, where's Blair?" And then I like I'm about looking around. Okay, I guess Blair didn't make it in. Where is he? Then all the kids look outside the window. You're still tied to that pole, struggling to get out. We were
Yeah, they
horribly mean
sent, I
kids.
believe, Chris Lugood came back out, and I think maybe Jim Bennett or someone. They untied my arms.
Probably because
They
they felt the most guilty. Probably that's why they came to help you.
the knots on my shoelaces were so tight they couldn't get them untied. I had to take my shoes off.
These were like
Um,
so-called friends too.
oh, fucking Chris Lugan was not a friend. I'm pretty sure my mother called the school about that, and yeah, she was not happy, and I don't blame her for that.
No, that was definitely the right call.
So there's
Remember,
a
remember
we
that
have
time when
definitely.
I stole your boot
Well, use that by
by accident?
accident.
I did it
Yeah,
by
that was
accident.
accident. We didn't even know each other back then.
Yeah, that was
So
funny.
Gary and I were in the same school in kindergarten, and Gary went home with my boot, and I went home with his as a result. And then my mother went over to his place to get my boot back. And I don't believe at your time your mother spoke very much English, so my mom had to wait around for your dad to get home to sort of communicate what was going on.
Yeah, I think I got it though. I got it when I got home and realized that one boot was I had two lefts.
Well,
One of
like,
the lefts was
yeah,
bigger. Like I think what it did was
your feet are tiny, Gary. No
yeah,
offense, but
like so I think what happened was we put our boots kind of like close together or whatever. And I went in and I took my right and your left wrist leg. I don't know. Something happened. I took because we had the same kind of boot. Yours was just bigger. I just took them both. I put them on. I went home, and I was like, man, I took the wrong boot. I don't know where this
you
other dude
did.
lives.
You did. You took the wrong boot, and
Yeah,
fortunately, our parents got it straightened out.
yeah, that was funny. We didn't even become friends at that point either.
It was years. It was like
Yeah,
5 years after that where we became
yeah,
friends.
that was hilarious.
All right, so I shared some bullying stories. I hope that helps someone who might be watching this.
Yeah, I mean, like I tell the story now. It was kind of like a very amusing memory, but it was probably not so much on your end.
I mean, I guess the question is, how does anyone feel about being bullied later in life? Like bullying is it isn't like just being like bullied on the playground. Bullying is, and I'm going to sound kind of like relevant, maybe social justicey. Like when you talk about racism, that's a form of bullying. When you talk about like office relationships with someone who's pushing you around, it's a form of bullying. Like anyone asserting power over you when you can't fight back is a form of bullying. And it doesn't feel good. Doesn't matter what age you are or why it's happening. It's not fair. It's not pleasant, and it's not acceptable. Now, with that said, I'm going to sort of go back and have a conflicting response to it. Being bullied as a kid has made me a stronger adult and made me better suited to deal with those situations. When I encounter bullies as an adult, I fight back. I've told people my current employer, I almost said their name, I've told people my current employer to fuck off when I felt like I was being bullied. Like I'd literally use those words and they would back down.
So do you
Bullies
think it's
collapse
it's
under
do,
their own, bullies collapse when you fight back.
so do you think there's an element where I guess it's the healthy thing to do would just try to shut that shit down early as you can.
No, I think what the healthy thing to do is find a way to better referee bullying. Bullying is important to, so as children to learn how to fight back against it. But what we fail as a society is how to properly referee it. Because when bullying gets to the point where someone becomes to a point of despair, the bullies won at that point, and because they no longer feel society's fair and are not able to cope. And that's where we're failing as a society.
Interesting. Good talks, man.
I've had a lot of time to
Uh,
think about this.
Yeah, I can tell. Anyways, let's segue back to talking about, I guess,
Talking about
games.
games.
Yeah. I guess the next question I want to ask is actually kind of not about games. It was kind of around, the creative aspect of, I guess, your kind of personality or whatever. Do you see yourself creating content outside of games in the near or distant future?
I mean, there's always been a creative aspect to me. I don't see myself doing it in the near future, only because my focus is on games right now. I've always, as you know, haven't always been very engaged in writing. Um, I love writing. I love sort of creating worlds, and that's sort of what making games also allows you to do. Um, I don't see it happening in the near future, just because my focus is on Kids of Karendow right now. But is it something I would love to see myself do in the future? Sure. But right now, no. I think my focus is just on games.
Well, I would say near future, as in, definitely post Kids of Karendow. Like I know the next few years is going to be very heavily focused on doing this game, obviously.
Honestly, once we get Kids of Karendow done, and we will, um, I honestly think it would be a short break, and then I'm going to be all into whatever the next game is, because I'm already thinking about it now, and I love doing this as much as I do.
Okay. So saying that, how much of that whole kind of process is actual coding?
It depends what your team is. I mean, indie game, if you're a small team like us, we're doing it all ourselves. And we've got a big project ahead of us, a JRPG, which is going to take several years to get done. I mean, if you want to compare, it is a small portion. Like I would say 30% of the time of the overall game development is spent writing code. The rest of it is creating content and creating your event systems. And if you have a bigger team, you have other people helping out with that. So you won't be doing it all. So you're an individual might be writing all the code. So all they're doing is writing code and like scripting and stuff. And then someone else might be creating like just events built off of an existing event system that they got from an asset store, or building events based off of what the original developer built for them. So I would say maybe like overall 30% of making a game is coding.
Okay, so you kind of have a project management background, right? So would you say that like kind of heavily influences
No, but
you
okay, yeah,
in,
sure. I mean, it is now and not always, but
yeah,
yeah, go for it.
I don't know. I thought you were a project manager at work.
I
At least
mean,
at
yeah,
some
yeah,
point you did, right?
I've definitely done a lot of project management
Yeah.
work. It hasn't been my sole job, but sorry. Anyway,
Yeah.
yeah,
But
I have done.
I guess how much of that factors into you managing this project? Like, do you draw heavily from those experiences?
100%.
Yeah. Do you
Uh,
see a lot of, I guess, project management style things being done in other indie games that you've witnessed?
so this is anecdotal, but here is what I've seen and what I've been told. So someone at Gumbo will walk up to me and say, um, when are you gonna get the game done? And then I say anywhere around, I'm hoping target is 2025, maybe it'll bleed in 2026. And they're like, holy shit. It's like, I just usually tell people a year, but I don't really know. And like, well, it's like, here's my Trello board, here's all the tasks we need to complete, here's how I've mapped it out. And I mean, it's not going to be perfect because I am literally planning 4 to 5 years in advance, and things will change. But based on my understanding of how long it takes for me to build X, Y, and Z, and now that we've got good artistic support, how long that takes, this is based on my experience and the data I have. This is how long I think it'll take, and this is how I've built my project plan based off that. I don't think that's common in the indie community. I really don't. I haven't. I don't know
So
a lot of people who've done. In fact, I can honestly say I am the only person who has mapped it out to this degree that I know of.
so I guess from your experience, it's mostly been people telling you they've been sticking their finger in the wind, more or
Yep.
less. Yeah.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think that was kind of our experience with, I guess all the indie game developers that we knew back in the day. You know,
Yep.
I think there was an
Most
element
of them never
where,
got anything
yeah,
done. Like most of the,
yeah,
when we were kids, we got stuff done. No one else did. And that's true.
because basically
But I
when they
think
say
it's
it's going to be done in a year, it's
a year.
yeah, it's just
Project could get
basically them
abandoned.
thinking they gave themselves enough time, but not really.
It's about motivation. It's about discipline. There's a lot of things that go into creating any sort of product. Doesn't matter about if it's a game or otherwise, but you need discipline, you need motivation. You need to be able to
You know,
pivot
like
to create
I would
something.
say, sorry to interrupt, but I would say that you were very good at that in a sense that like the output I see from you is very, very steady, right? Um, so I want to ask you, like, how do you stay so productive given all these other facets of life?
I don't know. I honestly, it's discipline. Like I wake up at 5 a.m. every day to work on the game. I have, as you know, and as I think our listeners know, I have a day job. I work full time for a software company. And that software company can be kind of demanding with respect to hours, but I always give myself 5 a.m. to at least close to 8 a.m. I mean, it varies. Lately, I am doing 7 days a week on the game. Few hours doesn't 7 days doesn't mean like 8 hours every day. It certainly does not mean that, but a few hours every day of the week. And I think it takes discipline, it takes focus, it really just takes sort of setting up a routine. And I've integrated in my sort of like daily life routine to do this. And I think even if I'm not like I'm not equally productive every day, but the important thing is I'm making progress every day.
Yeah, so waking up at 5 in the morning, that's a really awesome feat because I feel that you probably get all that time to yourself, right?
Mostly, not always, but mostly.
Yeah, like that's something that I wish I could do, but like sometimes I don't even fall asleep until like past past 5 a.m. sometimes.
Sometimes like is sleep a sacrifice for me? It has been. Like I don't always sleep very well. My brain It's really hard for my brain to shut off, whether it's the game stuff I think about or my day job or like my job. All that stuff like weighs on my mind, and I tend to catch up and sleep on the weekend. Um, but yeah, my sleep schedule's fucked up, to be quite frank.
Yeah, I think mine is too, and it's always been, like I said, like for me, like even on a weekday, sometimes I won't fall asleep until like 6 a.m. So I'll only get maybe like a couple hours.
That's rough.
Yeah, and I catch up on weekends. So like my weekends are sometimes almost like non-existent. Like if you were to ask me uh like on Saturday, what I do on Saturday, sometimes I won't even wake up until like very late in the afternoon. And I'll get up and kind of maybe like clean up or do some sort of errand, and then I'll have to like nap again until like 7 or 8. So like the day's like almost gone already, right?
That's tough. So is it that you just have a hard time falling asleep, or is it
Oh
just
yeah,
that
it's hard time falling asleep.
what
Overactive
like
mind, I guess.
I'm the same way. Like my brain does not shut off very easily at all. I'm gonna I'm gonna say this, but there's a little while last summer I was using edibles to fall asleep.
Gummy bears with nothing
Yeah,
else in it.
oh,
Yeah.
they're gummies. Yeah,
Okay.
it's
Does it
legal in New
help?
York State now. So
Does it help?
it did. I got a little concerned because my body got used to it, and I didn't want to get addicted. So I toned it down a little bit, and
Oh,
I haven't used it in a long time. But it was very helpful. It worked.
interesting. Okay. Duly noted. Yeah, so I don't know, Blair. I think that's all the kind of questions I wanted to get out of you. Unless there's any sort of closing remarks.
That's it for now. And we'll call it. So thanks everyone. We'll talk to you later.
Ciao, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the Phat Games podcast. Please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel. Next up, we have the boss fight music from Kids of Karendow.